Okay, so Johann Conrad Schlaun, 1695, 1773. And this was the man. Um, kind of funny that his name is Schlaun. It almost sounds like clown. And look at his nose. I mean, he was a nice man, no doubt. He looks like a nice man, but with a peculiar nose. And anyway, here there is a statue with him in front of a school, I think, with his own name, but I don't know if he built a school as well. Anyway, he was an architect, as you can see. He has, some papers in his left hand. Johann Conrad Schlaun, and he even made it to a stamp, which is not a little thing. You see at the top, J, K, C, Schlaun, Baumeister. Baumeister meaning, master builder or architect in German. Here he is again, Mr. Schlaun. And now a Kirche, a church. From 1724 to 1728, he built it kind of quickly now, in 4 years. At that time was not a long time. It wasn't so easy to find a very rich material about him. That's why this presentation is not very ample, very large, but we'll still have an idea about what he stood for and what he built. I like this building. I wouldn't describe it really as Baroque from the outside. I mean, with the exception of what is happening at the top. Otherwise, the building is very, almost austere. Now, another Kirche, another church, 1745, 1773, 1753, 1745, yes, Clemenskirche. Now here we see Baroque elements more. What can we say? There are many interesting architectures in the world, but he does have a good reputation, and he is well known in Germany. Another one, no, this is a city hall, I think 1753, 1757. No, it doesn't look like a city hall, unless it's a very small city hall. But I like this building. It's it's a small building. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't think that's an entrance to a garage, but it's a sweet building, no? And what can we say? History had its virtues too, sometimes, maybe often. But look at the facade, it's very well crafted. Those bricks are placed there on the facade with a lot of care. And, the facade is studied. It's not just a banal wall. Now, I don't know what this means in German, 1755, a large urban building. Maybe the Bruckenthal Museum in Sibiu was built around that time, maybe also Baroque, but it's not a violent Baroque. It's not. It is restrained, although the Rococo architecture in Germany could be very inflamed, so to speak. Yeah, 1764, 1768. In contrast with what he did, what Jonah Friedman tried to do is interesting, because there are two, after all, there isn't such a long distance in terms of time. Yes, 200, 250 years, but at the scale of human history, it's not really a lot. But what happened in the 20th century was dramatically different. Münster. He built a lot in Münster. I think this is a big castle, big palace, as you can see. A chapel. I don't know if this is part of the chapel or is a church behind or something, but this is his work, the chapel, and you can already, trace certain aesthetical attributes belonging to him from what we see, what we saw earlier. Münster again. I don't know, maybe this is the house of the gardener. It's nice. It's a nice little building, maybe very pleasantly inviting one to live there. Interesting that the window above is taller than the door, the entrance door. And I say it again, the oblongs are quite, I think, quite useful, and they can be employed in the present times too. They are useful. In Buren, 1719, 1728, a large so-called official building, again, this some kind of a palace, how to call it, a large, yes, a palace. Another church. He built a lot, but this one doesn't look like a church. But a Kirchen, it should be a church. Schloss, no, Schloss is a castle. It's a profane building. It's not a sacred building. I don't know what that Kirchen stands for. Another castle. This one does kind of look like one, or it's a large mansion. Anyway, another Schloss, another little castle. If it is a castle, if we can call it a castle, but here we see the the fluidities that the Baroque architect tried to achieve, even as a decoration, because it is a decoration for now, but still there are invitations towards some kind of architectural, getting drunk, so to speak. I don't know what this is. I don't think he did the square, just the building maybe in the background. Yeah, I'm sorry, I do not know German, but this is by him too, Mr. Schlaun. And another Schloss, another, I don't know if it's literally a castle, but anyway, it is what it is. It is what you look at. Nicely refurbished and still functioning. And then a Kirche, this time is, but the interior, architects often did this besides the building, but also they did sometimes sculpture as well. Another Schloss. I wonder how it would be today if you think again to incorporate some sculptures here and there in the building, maybe connected with the narrative of your project, maybe. I don't think, this eternal, which seems to be eternal now, divorce between architecture and art is a good one. A house that is like a castle, but this one, if I'm not mistaken, it looks very similar to the tower where Mad Hölderlin, a great German poet, lived for many years after he lost his mind, and a kind carpenter, I think, who lived. It was very similar to this, and the poet lived in the tower. It might be this one. I didn't double check, but I feel tempted to think that this is the one. Hölderlin, who talked beautifully about the forest of columns, but about many other things. And now other buildings by this Baroque German architect, Mr. Schlaun, Johann Conrad Schlaun. When are we going to paint ceilings again? Although MVRDV did it in Rotterdam, in that market that you probably know. Well, we should attempt to do this too, sometimes at least, for some projects, for some programs that would benefit from it. Okay, so Mr. Schlaun, who was actually to be born not today, but tomorrow. I don't know what this is. It's just a project, I think. Now, very, very, impressive buildings. These are not small, as you can see. This architect of whom I didn't know anything myself until not too long ago built a lot. And this, I think, is perhaps important to think about. The Roy architect, just like you, just like me, just like all the people who are contemporary, who, three centuries ago or 250 centuries ago, they would have been equally important then. Or, what I'm trying to say is these architects should be known. They were significant in their time. Maybe this man was as significant as, I don't know, Gottfried Böhm, or I don't know who, someone else from Germany, Hans Pölzig or whatever. And we don't know of them because we don't study the history of architecture properly. And it's true, there is a lot to know, but I think the past can inspire the present, and it usually does if it doesn't cripple you. And I do think there is a potential for what is called narrative architecture. That is an architecture which tells a story somehow, in some way. For example, when you design a building, you don't think of a particular, inhabitant, but maybe you should, or you should, or you could invent a scenario, like a story. You imagine who the dweller would be of your apartment building or of your house or whatever, and then build specifically for that person who has a specific biography, who is, let's say, a psychoanalyst living with her daughter. And I mean, that a building designed for a specific inhabitant or a specific client becomes different from a building designed for nobody in particular. I truly think so. The specifics of the biography of the one who lives in the house could inform the design and you in significant ways. Unfortunately, in modern architecture, for example, the Falling Water, Casa de la Cascada, the Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright doesn't say anything about the client, about the owner, about the one who paid and who lived there, Mr. Kaufman. It only says that it was commissioned by him. But we know nothing about Mr. Kaufman and his family looking at the building. We know about Frank Lloyd Wright, but not about Mr. Kaufman. The same with Villa Savoie by Le Corbusier. What do we know about the Savoie family? Nothing. We only know about the architect. But shouldn't the building also say something about the people who live there? I think they should. And I think of something that Gaston Bachelard said, and I actually think is important what he said. He said the mollusk doesn't build a house in order to live in it, as we do most of the time. That's what we do. but lives in order to build the house. So building the house is at the end of a biography, at the end of a lived life. We do the opposite. We quickly build a house to move in, to sit on the sofa and watch TV. But the building doesn't say anything about our life, about our, struggles in life or our joys or the specificities of our life. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's an abstract building, more or less well designed, but doesn't say anything about the life of the one who lives there. And I don't think that is beneficial and not even correct. Here in front of a building by Mr. Schlaun is a sculpture by an important North American sculptor, Richard Serra. Now the interior, if this is not Baroque, I don't know what it is. I mean, this is Baroque in excess. I mean, it's the excess of the excess. It's almost Rococo here. But I wouldn't say it's unpleasant, no? Imagine yourself doing a project on the floor, either on the laptop or with, with pencils and paper, on the floor of this room, What kind of building would you do? Would you just do a rectangular little box? Or would you feel tempted to be inspired by the walls, by the ceiling, by whatever is in this room? And as for working on the floor, some great architects worked on the floor, even great mathematicians. I know a great mathematician who unfortunately died rather young, a lady. She arrived, I think, to teach at Stanford, but she was born in Iran and she died of cancer. But she used to do mathematics of the highest order on the floor, on large pieces of paper, and her daughter thought that she was doing doodles, but she was actually doing an extremely sophisticated kind of mathematics. And I think when you work on the floor, well, the word work is only partially appropriate. When you play, it's work and play, you do both. You are childlike, and that I think has a good effect on what you do. I tried it, it works. Sit on the floor and try to work on an architectural project. You'll see that as a toddler, the architect as a toddler is more, playful and more, innovative. This is what I feel. Because you cannot divorce work from play if you want to be creative. If you don't want to be creative, you can work without playing. But if you want to be creative, a certain amount of playfulness is necessary. And we'll see this in the next, for the next presentation about Jonah Friedman. So buildings in Germany by Mr. Schlaun. Some more austere, some more exalted. Johann Conrad Schlaun, a Baroque German architect. We already saw this one. Okay, and now we go to Jonah Friedman. Jonah Friedman was actually born today, and he was and is very valued in other countries. But you'll see, he's a very special case, I would say. Jonah Friedman, 1923, 2020. He was born in Hungary, and he lived for about a decade in Israel, and then he settled in Paris. But he arrived to, publish some influential books, and he even taught at American universities like MIT or Harvard. But from from the little actually I know about him, the work that impresses me the most is his own apartment in Paris, and you'll see it. So Jonah Friedman was a Hungarian-born French architect, urban planner, and designer. You see, he was born on June 5th, 1923, and he almost reached the age of 100 minus 3 years. He died in 2020, so last year. He was influential in the late 50s and early 60s, best known for his theory of mobile architecture. And this is the man. You'll see several pictures with him. Here in older age, he was active until, above, being above 90. He looks like a nice man, and his apartment testifies. His apartment in Paris testifies about the same thing. But is what he did truly architecture? This is a question I ask, because he claims that in a way that what is behind is architecture. It's more like sculpture. But he was able to be very influential, even with this, maybe questionable identity of what he proposed. Is it architecture? Was it supposed to be architecture? Friedman describes his approach as one that believes that ideas can be more important than objects themselves, an approach that goes back 2,500 years, but is often forgotten. And I don't know, I mean, yes, of course, an idea is important, but a building, in order to become a building, it cannot remain at the level of an idea. So as architecture is the art of implementing with matter and building for human life in general. It cannot remain at the ethereal level of so-called ideas. Some drawings, in fact, many drawings. He drew incessantly and became famous for his drawings. They are in collections all over the world, and they are very valued. They are called visionary drawings, most of them. But let's read a little bit here. There are 3 preconditions for people's architecture. What do we see there? It must be easy to assemble for a layman. It has to be an assembly of inexpensive technical components and easy to disassemble and reassemble into a different pattern. But is this a house? I mean, you'll see that he did do these things. Yes, it's true, in wire, like this, but it's not really a house. I mean, it could be speculatively for the brain, for the mind, maybe for the poetical imagination, but it's not really a house where you can spend the night when it rains heavily outside, because there is no outside. So, people's architecture, it's nice that he wanted to achieve a democratic architecture and an architecture with the participation of those people who were supposed to use the buildings. This is nice as an idea. And it was practiced, and it is practiced. And in ancient societies, I mean, old and even more recent, in Africa and other places, especially in poorer societies, people build like this without an architect, actually. So that could have been called people's architecture. But he was actually a sophisticated, intellectual, and the idea sounds good, but how do you implement it? Here he wrote, l'architecture est d'abord sociale. Architecture is first social. I don't know if I do agree that the social dimension of architecture is very, very important. Yes, it is. Then what he wrote, on peut la consommer comme une des beaux-arts. Considérer. So it can be considered as one of the fine arts. Well, some people don't think so these days. That's why architecture became often so dry, because we divorced it from its artistic soul. Then elle est une artisanale, elle est aussi artisanale technique. Yes, it is about techno, and it is about manufacturing. It's about making. L'art de sculpter le vide, the art of sculpting the void. This is an interesting way to put it in words. The architecture as the art of sculpting the void. Perhaps we can talk about it and think about it. You can create a museum without a building. And he tried, and you will see pictures. It is the exhibits that makes a museum. Well, yes, but what do? You bring the artworks in the street. This is an idea that is was vehiculated by other people, to break the distance between the street or life and the museum. But in actuality, how do you do it? I mean, there are all kinds of considerations. The work can be attacked by the elements, or it can be attacked by people, or it can be stolen. So, in pragmatic terms, it's very difficult to do it. But the idea of a street museum is good. But in essence, it is about bringing beauty to the street. And you can do it. In fact, if you incorporate art in the walls of the buildings that surround the street, that is kind of like a museum, but it's part of the architecture. It's part of the works that inhabit, so to speak, the two sides of a street. Now, he had all kinds of, because it was also the time, the 50s and the 60s, many people indulge in visionary, projections. They wanted to transform society. So he did a lot of drawings in this sense. In what measure they are feasible, he claimed that they are feasible. And I think in good measure they are, but they were not really built like this. At that time also the Japanese metabolists worked in this way. There were other architects. He was not the only one. But it's nice that, and I think he can be an inspiration also for us to not be happy to just follow the strict requirements of the present, but to envision a better city, a better house, a bit better architecture, and better life. I think the architect as a visionary is a necessity in good measure. So he did all kinds of drawings. We see the old horizontally here, and then we see the new above in this way. And he didn't build them, but there were some architectures that approximated what he did to an extent. The assault of the cars, you see them in the lower right corner, and also in the center of. He thought of all kinds of ways of provoking himself and maybe others. Ce sont les œuvres qui font le musée. There are the works, the artworks, which make the museum. It's true, but anyway, he has a website with a dog, actually like here, like drawn like this, which moves its tail. It's nice. It's joyous. This is impossible to read. Sorry, he designed also, he drew published books with architectural cartoons, but which have a narrative. Cities in the past were compact, many people in a small area, necessary for security, defense, and so on. Enemy, keep out. For efficient service networks and for communication by meeting people, he proposes various ways of, and I think it's important for the architect to also think about urban matters, to also be an urbanist. All important architects were not just architects. There were also urbanists and also object designers and interior designers and so on. I think Jonah Friedman is encouraging us, even if you don't have clients, even if you don't work in an office and you find a way to survive somehow, you can draw at home, you can model, you can work digitally or manually, you can express your ideas. But as Stephen Hall said, if there is idealism in you, express it. Take it out. Don't let it, die within yourself. If there is idealism in you, send it towards the others, towards society. It's very, very important. This man found this way to externalize his thoughts and some of his thoughts were, influential and, they were taken seriously. Now, of course, the engineer or a certain kind of architect would ask, well, how do these things stand here? Structurally, would it really be easily possible or whatever? Where is the bathroom? And no, it's true. He didn't think of these matters, but he said that he always thought of his drawings to be feasible. And I think it was true. Otherwise, this what you see here, he used often, with a cube with circles inscribed on the faces of the cube. Uh, at that time, he was not the only one who made such drawings. There were many, even very important architects in Japan or Europe or the United States. It was something at that time which I think is needed again in the world. To dream again, to think of possible ways to improve life on Earth, to consume less, to take care of the climate change, to take care of pollution, and so on. There are many, many subjects that need to be addressed. But besides his dreamy side, you can also see that a certain structuralism, if I can call it so. But that structuralism almost completely vanishes in his own apartment in Paris, which is very beautiful and very poetical and very anachronical, actually. You'll see. And when you think about these drawings, when you look at his apartments, you wonder, how could this be? It's true, he was very old when he lived there. I don't know for how long, but it does look like an apartment where he lived for a long time. I do think it's important to dream, if for nothing else but to bring joy to your soul. If you do it, you might contribute with something to yourself and to society. So do it. Draw, write, model, whatever. His idea was of an architecture where people spontaneously would create an ad hoc architecture, with just, for example, the artist Constant in the Netherlands proposed something similar in, the New Babylon proposal that he made. So how exactly maybe, society would provide the grid and then people would insert fragments of houses or buildings or whatever cells within this framework. Would it work? I mean, it is possible, this is for Paris. You see here Tour Eiffel, you just build a grid and then, have free incorporations, being supported structurally by the structural system. It's possible. It was not done, but it's possible. On the other hand, I wonder how would it be, to have this bulky, structures hanging over your head. Maybe not everything would be so great. Maybe. He even received the Frederick Kistler prize in architecture 5 years ago in 2016. I don't know if you know, I mentioned from time to time, Frederick Kistler, although he claimed he was born in Austria, he was actually born in Romania. And I have a monograph on him where it says a Romanian architect who lived and worked in Austria, in France, in the United States. Very interesting man, Frederick Kistler, and very, very appreciated by many people in the West. And as I said earlier, he has, I mean, not today, other days, there is a Kistler Foundation in Vienna, the capital of Austria. And that foundation, together with the Austrian government, gave a prize, an important prize to Jonah Friedman. A little more than half of what the Pritzker Prize is in terms of money, like 65,000 euros or whatever. Anyway, but at that time he was already 93 years old or 94. Anyway, but what I'm saying is if you produce highly creative work and you make it public, you send it towards other people, towards society, something at one time or another might happen as a consequence. Now he talks about simple, structures or technologies, but they're not actually so simple, and we are going to see some of those. Facade, well, rather schematic, but you saw his idea that ideas are more important than objects. This one almost has something of the plans of Kazuyo Sejima, another Japanese architect, plan de l'étage. In essence, what I see here is an attempt to unite order with disorder, or rigor or work or seriousness with pleasure or playing. We saw this one already. Museums can be in the street, and he built one in India, and we are going to see it. Agglomération spatiale pour 1000 habitants, a spatial agglomeration for 1,000 inhabitants. Okay, it's just a diagram, a sketch. Assemblies can take place anywhere. You don't need big halls. Well, you see, it is raining, right? And people have umbrellas. And it's true, when you want to protest or when you have something to truly ardently advocate, you can do it also in the rain, in the snow. Yes, it can be done outside as well. In essence, he was probably attempting to bring life to what it deserves to have, to break the enclosures. He was an adversary of what he called the political mafia and the media mafia. And I too have the feeling that we are controlled by the media. Who knows? I wouldn't use such words, mafia, but we are controlled. Hollywood is controlling the whole world through the mechanisms of pleasure. As it is said, you caress a cat to death. And that's what's happening with the many channels on TV, with all the offerings for all kinds of, you know, enterprises, you know, films and so on, through entertainment. In my opinion, entertainment is a cancer. I'm all for joy, but not for entertainment. Entertainment is very dangerous, in my opinion. Anyway, they are kind of the same. I'm accelerating a little bit. I'm a little bit myself tired of all these drawings where he insistently even brought these things in front of Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris. And now a home for refugees. And indeed, he was very sensitive to refugees. But this scheme that he does, where he has a cube made of you know, wires circled, you know, round wires, is they're not really houses. You know, it's funny how insistent he was doing this. You know, like here, you know, you built a city. You know, it would be very nice to build so easily a city, wouldn't it? As he sketches here. He wrote here, cardboard or any material you find may do it. It is true that Jonah Friedman, the years before sustainability became, you know, fashionable, he advocated a sustainable architecture. And it's true, you can do a lot with found materials, you know, with least expensive means. You can, if you use your imagination, and you'll see his apartment. Now, the Serpentine summer houses of 2016, he called them houses, but more Serpentine galleries called them summer houses. They are not really houses. Here they are. You know, this is what he did. Like in his sketches, in his drawings, you know, Serpentine invited him to do these things, and he did them. Jonah Friedman's summer house took the form of a modular structure that could be assembled and disassembled in different formations. Right. So the architect's statement, the proposed summer house builds upon my project for La Ville Spatiale, the spatial city, begun in the late 1950s. The manifesto for this project, published in 1959, was based on two pillars or principles. Firstly, a mobile architecture that could create an elevated city space and enable the growth of cities while restraining the use of land. Secondly, the use of modular structures to allow people to live in housing of their own design. Well, it sounds good, and I even like these things, but I don't think I can spend the winter there. I just can't. And nor do I think that he could have. Impossible, you know. But they're nice because they're almost non-existent. And I don't know if you know, there is a Romanian architect who actually studied at Mincu, Oana Bogdan, who has her own office in Belgium with her husband or partner anyway. And he said that, you know, the best way to be sustainable is not to build at all. Well, in a way, Friedman points in that direction, because these are not houses, you know, they are just, you know, dreams, you know, it's sketches in the air. But he advocated an idea, and I guess using this suggestion, you could build something, but not like this. I mean, these are, you know, they are sculptures, they are not architectures. Here he is explaining his ideas with passion, perhaps. Here in his older years. The Museum of Simple Technology in Madras in India, it's actually, sorry, it's from 1982, not 1987. I meant to correct it and I forgot. It's nice. I mean, you know, in his idea to bring art or the art objects you know, that usually are within the museum, to bring them outside. And the structures are nice, but again, they are thoughts of structures rather, you know, they are decorations on the sky. They are not really buildings. But there is a light spirit in Jonah Friedman, which I like, you know, this childlike playfulness that we see here. And he worked also with bamboo, and it is something nice here. I think he loved India, and you'll see his apartment there. There is a clear influence coming from East. In my opinion, he has the most lyrical, the most poetical apartment of any architect in the world. I never saw something like this, and you will see. So now I will end the presentation, this short presentation about Jonah Friedman, with images from his apartment in Paris. First of all, look here, you know, I mean, and he was given as an example to the students at Harvard last year of someone who works from home. But I mean, that's not what you would have in mind when thinking about working from home, right? Although he works, but it's halfway work, halfway play. It's work and play. It's playing. It's art. Look what he painted on the walls, and look at everything else. You know, it's a very human interior. I like it very much, and I don't think I would be able to do something like this. But look what he suspends here at the top. You know, it's incredible. You know, it's some kind of a I don't know. Even here, you know, the place where he slept. You know, there is a mask on the bed, and look at these mandalas on the walls. In fact, I thought of talking tomorrow about the mandala by the way of Carl Jung. And at the top, one of his houses, as he calls them. And look at these other images, you know, it's some kind of a beautiful madness here. You know, I like it. I mean, he was able in Paris to furnish an apartment as if it was in India or somewhere in Southeast Asia. Totally gone is the structuralism of some structuralist parts of his so-called visions. It was more like a child, you know. What does he have here on the shelf, you know? Little soldiers, you know, little dolls, and amazing. And maybe many of these things were found on the street. Improvisation. Yes, look at this. I mean, he had no room almost to move. It's okay. And he covered everything. You know, this is called horror vacui, you know, where you have a horror of anything empty. You have to cover everything with, you know, walls, floor, ceiling, everything. That's what we see here. But there is a purity of spirit, which I like, a certain innocence. You know, if you look at this, you wouldn't imagine that this is where a 90 years old man lived. Recycling, yes, also recycling, recycling again. I think we should recycle as much as possible. And when you start physically the school, please refuse to make projects on paper which will end up in the garbage can, please. You know, we don't need more trees cut down, do we? because those many projects, I took myself hundreds of projects from the garbage can, you know, trying to save them and trying to, I thought of creating an exhibition called the Lagunoi. Uh, we cannot continue with this, really. It's known we need the trees, we need oxygen. The world is very polluted. Bucharest is very polluted. Don't spend your money any longer on paper. Work on the other side of an old project. Don't buy a new paper. It's lost money. Plus, it means that paper cutting down trees. We don't need that. So look what he has here in the left corner, you know. I mean, it's unbelievable. And toys, you know, it's amazing, really. I mean, I don't think there is any architect in the world, doesn't matter in the East or the West, who would have something like this in the house. This is the very opposite of a mainstream house, you know. Most architects have, you know, Bauhaus chairs or whatever, you know, sleek design, you know, open space. But look at this. I love it. And look what's here at the top, you know. I mean, maybe anima, the you know, feminine soul within Jonah Friedman was very strong, demanding such things, you know, or maybe they belong to his wife. I don't know, but I think it's very interesting. Like here too. And not really buildings here. Well, although he's considered an architect and an urbanist. And you see some structures here, it's true, but all in all, we see a lion, we see all kinds of things, usually coming from other cultures, not Western, really. Books, but look at these shelves, you know. He probably built them, and obviously without a lot of skill. It's okay. I think his apartment is very human, and it shows humanity in its sweet way, so to speak. You know. He obviously loved these drawings here. Maybe he did them or not, but they are on the walls. You can find other images with his apartment on the web. Even Domus published them, and the Divisare and so on. Because it is unique, it's true. Yes, he put everything on the wall, everything. Now, after you saw images with this apartment, how would you design an apartment or a house? You know, a plain white cube with white walls, with white rooms, rectangular rooms. And look here, you know, look what he has here. It's incredible, you know. But but this man lived here. He lived in this house. This is the you know, the result of him living in this house. If someone else lived here, would have been very, very different. And here he is, in old age, yes. But I like to think, I think with the soul of a child. Jonah Friedman, born in Hungary. Of course, some dangerous connections. I have kind of similar things in my own house. Actually, you know, I pray every day I go out of the house when I do get out that nothing happens, you know, because it's scary. Uh, I mean, this is certainly not a very designed, rational way to do this, to carry electricity through. But I like it. I mean, yes, it's dangerous, but it's nice for a change. Interesting man. And look here, it's a shrine, is it not? It's a shrine, clearly. This is a shrine. This is, he transformed one of his rooms and in a shrine. Well, the the TV is there, the media or whatever, photographing him, interviewing him, and so on. A very unique apartment indeed. We even had something like this. I don't know exactly in what room, but I found that image. Um, in a way, the alphabet in whatever the language connects somehow with the structures of his mobile, architectures or cities. And I like the presence of the mask or masks. There is even a rectangle here, I think. No, is it not? Or something? No, no, that's the arm of another silhouette on the wall. But he has studies here on the wall. He was a dreamer, of course, a dreamer who became very well known. But and that's what I'm saying: dream, dream, dream. The world would be more beautiful if you allow those dreams within you to come out. And now we'll look at some of his so-called simple technologies as part of exhibitions like this. It doesn't look so simple to me, nor this one. But the Miami project, he was invited, I don't know, in 2015, 2016 to do something that you already saw actually, but he in a different context with these so-called houses, cubes with round circular wires on the faces of the cubes. And at the level of metaphor, it functions. It's like you have the trees, you have nature, and then you have the human gesture, the human artifact. And, symbolically and metaphorically it works. But they are not houses, of course, these. And yet some people consider them as being so. Okay, that's it. So happy birthday, Jonah Friedman, and to you, thank you for being here today.